Welcome to the MadTrio podcast. This week we have the California Pariah, Jonathan Charny, James, the Fattman Stevens.
Hello.
And Rob, the old guy.
You're listening to the Rob Charny Show.
Yeah, I'm here. Don't get too excited.
One of these days we gotta find that podcast you keep talking about. So we're gonna start with bringing out the dead, the folks that we love that have passed away that we kind of want to honor. Starting out with
Otter.
Yep.
I don't want to otter anybody.
Honor.
Okay.
That was utterly ridiculous. Tom Sizemore, American actor from Saving Private Ryan, Wyatt Earp, dies following a brain aneurysm at 61.
What a bummer. Really a bummer.
Robert Blake, American Emmy award-winning actor, Beretta in Cold Blood, Little Rascals, etc., dies at 89. I vaguely remember issues revolving this guy. Couldn't tell you what. Didn't look it up.
Oh, it's hard to tell if he really did it or not. But the fact is, the court said he didn't. So take that. And I like Robert Blake.
Dave Wills,
the original Little Rascals. In case you guys know. And there's people out there probably don't know who's the Little Rascals. Go look them up.
Dave Wills, American sportscaster, radio voice of Tampa Bay, dies from heart disease at 58. William Shortner, American jazz saxophonist and composer. The notes here says Art Blakey's jazz messenger, Miles Davis, weather report, dies at 89.
Yeah. And
Steve Mackey, a mainstream of British pop, dies at 56.
Huh.
That's.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, either have I. But I'm not a giant fan of pop, to be honest, at least modern pop. Wait a minute. What's considered modern pop? Is the last 20 years considered modern pop, or does it have to be today's music to be considered modern?
Probably today's music. 20 years ago music is 20 years ago music. That's not modern. That's old.
Damn, I guess I am. So I've got a couple of stories I wanted to start off with. They're not funny, but I thought they was interesting. This is from pbs.org from NewsHour, and the headline is Examining How Politics Became Intertwined with Personal Identity. Now, I didn't want to get into the politics aspect, but I thought it was interesting how you talk to the people, and instead of being, it's you identify yourself by your job, your religion, and your political party, all which is really annoying. So
I think it's called a mental disorder, John.
See, I would like, this is from somebody from Massachusetts. I would like to talk about my politics with my blank, discuss politics with my friends. I would like to share ideas, exchange notes with them. But unfortunately, we are at a dead end where there's a wall. This is a guy from Johns Hopkins. Decades ago, we disagreed over things like role of government or the size of government or what we wanted government to doing with. And these types of decisions, we could find a compromise. That's basically the theme of all these things, basically saying that nowadays you can't really talk about anything without getting friendly. It's become a us versus them mentality. We're seeing today as the divide is much more about our feelings about each other. We are angry at one another. Democrats and Republicans don't trust one another. We are more likely to dehumanize people in the other party. We think they're a threat to the country, and that these feelings are not the kind of thing we can compromise with. And one of the reasons I want to bring this up, because it's kind of been my thing lately of compromise, of respect. And we talked about that in some point in the podcast recently. What have you guys noticed, and how do you think we could change that?
Well, I'll start with this. The thing that I came to the conclusion of a long time ago was it's okay for people to be wrong. I'm okay with that. Like, I don't have to share your opinion to talk to you. You can be wrong, and I'm okay with that.
James is the most humble man in the room.
I think the problem is that a lot of people don't have that mentality that just because somebody disagrees with you, you have to conform them or change their mind to your views.
Yeah. You got to yell at them. You got to yell at them until they believe the way you believe.
Yeah. I think there's a quote from Keanu Reeves where he's like, is somebody telling him like 2 + 2 is 5, and he's like, you know what, you're right, and I like that. That's the same mentality that I'm saying is like, just because somebody doesn't agree with me, I don't care. What does that do to me? Nothing. I don't have to hang out with you if it's bad enough, but for the most part, I don't care.
Yeah, I know there's a quote from George Washington that I've heard bandied about within the last 3 weeks. I'm actually looking at it, and it's rather long, so I don't know if y'all want me to read it. But basically, he warns against this type of thing. Do you actually want me to read it?
No, you can paraphrase. And for you, John, that means you don't have to read the whole paragraph.
So it's actually a lot of paragraphs, but let me read the top bit. It says, I have already intimated to you the dangers of parties in the state, with particular reference to the founding of them on a geographical discrimination. Let me now take a more comprehensive view and warn you in the most solemn manner against the baneful effect of the spirit of party generally. This spirit, unfortunately, is inseparable from our nature, having its roots in the strongest passions of the human mind. It exists under different shapes in all governments, more and less stifled, controlled, or repressed. But in those of the popular form, it is seen in its greatest ranks and is truly the worst enemy, which 100% agree.
Okay. Yeah, I can get behind that. I mean, I don't know. There was a time when I sided with a party. Now I just look at them both. I say both, but there's way more than just the two main that we have in our country. But I look at it this way: it's like to sit there with party politics is really blinding you to the overall picture of what's going on. To sit there and be like, this side is doing this or this side's doing that. How about just all sides are shit? Because they are. They've all become shit. And I've watched this over my years growing up. When I was a kid, I paid a lot more attention to politics. Now I just want to blow everything up if I pay attention.
Well, you toned out there a little bit, James.
Partisan politics has been an issue really for a very long time. And it had let's face it, you go back far enough and everything was corrupt as far as politics go. And you look at
Hello?
Hall and all the other, and vote shaming, and that is the recent stuff. And, everything is a little strange. And, I used to say that a Republican is only a Democrat that's been mugged. And I still think to a degree that's what it is. And
so you guys are going to have to give a little bit of a synopsis. We had some technical glitches here.
We did. James
we had
and I
none over here.
Yeah,
we were fine.
It was 100% over here. So
listen to the show. How's that?
It didn't get recorded, is what I'm saying.
Are you telling me I should have recorded it on this end now? The one time I didn't do it.
So just a brief synopsis of what you said. The second run through is usually better.
I really think that politics have been partisan politics forever. And then corruption has been in politics forever. And all you have to do is go back in history and read history a little bit, and you'll see that that's been the case. Talked about Tammany Hall and some of the other situations that used to take place. And so now the situation we have is with things like we got, sorry about that, things we have going on today is just, the problem is it's all between podcasts and tweets and TikToks and and Instagrammies and whatever else you want to get at. Everybody's got an opinion out there, and just like we do to a degree, and they have a right to that opinion. I've always said that, and I've always looked that way. They have the right to that opinion. Doesn't mean I have to agree with it.
I think the difference, at least with us three, that we take politics less seriously than the average person, because I have friends that are, left of Pol Pot, if you want to talk about the political spectrum, but they're people I love, so I harass them a lot. I know
there are people on both sides that can't take a centralist view.
Oh,
they can't, they don't know how to do a debate. It's my way or the highway, and and it just seems to be the way it is. And we've been saying this for a while here, is that if people could figure out a way to come to the middle and discuss and talk, then things would be a whole lot better. But what examples do you have? You don't have the examples in the legislature. You don't have the examples in presidential politics. You don't have the example in anything, it seems like nowadays. There's just no, so how do we get people, the rest of the people, to come
I would say part of it is actually have people understand what compromise is. And I've had my cousin and a few other people scoff at this idea. And I tell people, and they said, you know what a compromise is? And they say, no, what's that? I said, when everybody's pissed off. The chances are, if everybody's mad at the result, that means it's better for us. That means it's probably closer to what it should be than some sort of partisan political maneuver. And by the way, partisan politics happens everywhere. This isn't an American thing.
Right.
If you go to what is it, North Korea, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, you got that right.
I mean,
North Korea is terrible.
In comparison, we got it pretty good.
There is something I just caught in this article from PBS. They do talk about basically the moral majority, Jerry Falwell's and the Christian conservatives and the Reaganisms.
Is this political broadcasting station or the public broadcasting station? I'm trying to get
this is
clearly on what you're reading from.
Basically, this is just a bunch of people that were talking about why this is the case. Okay. And
who are these people? That's what I want to know. I want to know who these people are, Joe.
This one is Judy Woodruff. So this is basically like a transcript of the conversation that was on a PBS show, it looks like.
Oh, okay.
And so they're basically talking about things that they've noticed in their lifetime. My assumption, like I remember a lot of people when I was younger, especially the more liberal side, saying how Jerry Falwell caused this. And then you have a lot of conservatives saying Jimmy Carter and all these people did this. And I find it interesting that we all need bad guys.
So it's finger pointing.
Pretty much, but I don't necessarily think... Politics. Yeah, I don't think they're wrong, though. I think every side, when you have a movement when it comes to politics, doesn't necessarily do anything positive. I mean...
Can I start one now where I just say Jim Jones did it? Is that a good one? Is that acceptable? No?
Where's the cricket sound? I need to play it.
Yeah, that really went over.
Here's the problem. One of the reasons I'm looking to get out of the state of California. No offense to you guys in California. I'm a born and raised Californianite. My 70th birthday. But I got to tell you, it doesn't seem like this state allows for, and it doesn't really matter a whole lot where you live. It's just not allowing for discussions on both sides of issues. And
so I did want to point out just real quick, I've heard a lot of Democrats say the same thing about Texas. I do want to be kind of middle of the road on this discussion.
They can say that too, and that's probably right. So what do? You need to maybe get out of the state that you don't like the politics in and go to another state where maybe it's more aligned with your point of view. I know for the last part of my life, maybe that will be the thing that I need to do. So I don't keep screaming at the television or trying to pull what little hair I have left out.
So if there's anybody listening to this, I would be curious of your point of view. Facebook is probably the best way to get a hold of us on here. I'm curious.
I'm kind of curious. I have a question for you real quick.
Never mind, John. Your point of view doesn't matter anymore.
Before he's asking people to put their opinion on. Before you run out of the state, do you let your dogs stick their head out the windows?
No.
Okay. So Florida wouldn't be a bad state for you because that's now illegal.
Well, good. Because, there's nothing worse than getting your dog's eye poked out by a rock.
But that's why you have doggles.
Well, they just put in a SB 932 will make it illegal to declaw a cat, sell a rabbit before Easter, and allow your dog to stick its head out the window when you're driving a vehicle.
So can you have your dog on your motorcycle?
I didn't see that in the law, but the dog also cannot sit on the driver's lap, which I'm okay with,
Mm-hmm.
in a trunk or in a truck bed.
Yeah. Okay. Now,
What about
I'm
carrying in a
definitely-
purse?
I am definitely for this truck bed thing. Unfortunately, I saw a dog flung out of a truck bed,
Oh, God.
and it was horrible. And I never want to see it again, nor do I want anybody else to see that again. So
You
yeah,
know,
I'm
I
good
see
with
the
that.
ones that have them tethered, on a leash or something.
Right.
When it's a long leash, I got a big issue with that, because that's how your dog's going to jump out of the bed and hang itself while you're driving down the road.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen some that have really short leashes where they can't access the sides.
Yeah.
But they're,
So,
more in the center. I'm more okay
Yeah,
with that.
I mean, there's, for me, it's just that they're fairly inexpensive kennels out there, and put them in a kennel. If you're going to put them in the truck bed, make sure that the kennel is fastened down and isn't going anywhere, and put them in the kennel.
My biggest issue with the leashes is because usually what they're doing is they're connected to a $20 collar. If it was like a harness, something that had more than one point of contact in a dog, I would be okay with it. The biggest issue is the fact I've had collars break on me when I'm walking my dog. So I don't know. And the cat,
but you probably didn't fasten it right on yourself.
thanks.
Oh, your dog didn't walk.
Yeah, it's not your dog's fault, John. It's yours.
You are fake news.
I didn't know what you were talking about. The dog's collar or your collar?
The dog's collar, darn it. And I'm actually okay with the
On you.
declawing the cat thing. That I never thought that was particularly a good thing to do to a cat.
I understand.
A
Yeah,
cat
I understand.
thing,
It's a
especially if the cat's going outside. An indoor cat, you can just trim the nails if you're worried about it. But to actually remove the claws, that's really fucked up.
So
it is, and I hear it's very painful for the cat
Oh, yeah.
afterwards too. So
it's like we're
come
removing
on,
your
guys.
toes. So the next story, this is straight for Ryan. I wish he was here because he would roll his eyes. This is from TheVerge.com. Headline is, hold on, I got to get the proper music for this because this headline's hilarious. Going to the movies is becoming a test of what you can afford. So this is via AMC. So back in the Great Depression of the 1930s, people found escape from the bad news of the day by going to the movies. In fact, I can't count how many movies. Basically, they're saying that what AMC is doing basically is they're charging percentage based on where you're sitting. So if you're sitting up front, it's X amount of money. If you're sitting in the best spots, it's X amount of money. I hate this.
Wait.
So this idea has been batted around before. It's it's like going to concerts or whatever you want, or football games or whatever it may be. You want the better seats.
Opera's pretty famous for that.
The opera, whatever it may be. If you want better seating, you're going to pay better price.
I see. Here's sorry.
So, now, I have a problem with that first line you read there, John. They went to the movies to escape the bad news of the day.
Newsreels.
The person that wrote this article does understand that they did news before the movies, right?
I don't think they did.
Newsreels.
Got to see the newsreels before the movie started, so they got bad news anyways.
So, guys, speaking of that, do you guys now? I don't think, I can't say for sure, but I don't think you guys were ever old enough to actually see a newsreel.
I've seen them, but not in theater.
So, the dollar theater that I used to go to when I was really young in Southern California did do that. They did have some newsreels that they played.
Okay. All right.
Before, they had intermissions. It was like an all-day movie theater that you go to.
Right. So,
dollar something that you could go there for hours, watch a few movies, then go home. And they had intermissions. They had little things going on in between.
So they used to have the newsreels beforehand, and I'm actually old enough to remember seeing actual newsreels. Surprisingly enough, still in black and white. And then there was a cartoon. There was almost always a cartoon before.
Fascinating.
And then a small break, and then the movie would start, and then there would be an intermission at a movie where you get up and do whatever you need to do and get back, and then start the movie again. And things have totally gotten away from that. Now, for better or for worse, I don't know. It was just different than it is today. But wouldn't it be interesting?
This is
and trailers were actually trailers after the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is why I think movie theaters are going to become a boutique experience, just because I think people are getting priced out. Not only are all movies right now the same, i.e. Disney and DC. I think people are tired of the prices. I really don't like the fact that if I wanted the best seat in the house, I'm going to have to pay a certain amount of money, when I liked first come, first serve. That was half the fun to me, was that experience.
And so my thing
I got tired fighting for my seat. A couple times I had to punch people out, and
just go with James.
They frowned on that. Yeah.
James always got the best seat in the house.
My thing is that, you can go to the movie theater, you can get your experience and all that great stuff. But I think it's close to 90% of the movies that are out in theater, you can stream them at home within a week of them being released in the theater, if not earlier or the same time.
Right.
There are some movies that are out that I know are like exclusively theater experiences for at least a month, and then you can stream them at home. But
if I was a theater owner, AMC, Regal, whatever, I'd certainly want that to be a month. But, I understand. And don't forget, they don't really make money on the movies per se, right? They make their money on the popcorn, the soda, the candy, everything else that goes on.
Pizzas, whatever they do now.
Yeah. Now there's bars and you could you want a drink, there, go over to that bar over there and order your cocktail. I mean, it's okay. And then there's the boutique theaters that serve meals with it, and and that's how they make their money.
So I
always wanted to do the meal theater thing, but I never got to do it. I've been interested to try it, but
yeah, my understanding is the Lux Theater down in Folsom is open up again doing that. So.
Yeah, it was getting really popular. Then COVID hit, and I just never got around to it.
I didn't think we'd ever see them come back after COVID, to be honest with you. I really was surprised.
So talk about a movie we may not see another one. Analyzing the numbers, YouTube Valiant Renegade says even after 3 weeks it is released, it is unlikely Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is ever going to breach $400 million. That means it's a loss, folks. He added, this movie is done. I think $500 million is almost entirely off the table. This movie concluded the box office run here in the U.S. and abroad, maybe somewhere around $450 million, and is the big loss for the Walt Disney company. I saw somewhere somebody said here in an article, I think it was $600 million total for the entire movie.
What's it take to actually make money on a movie when you have to, net $650 million just to break even, and then then you hope for a few bucks after that. When's there's going to be reality to this?
We are looking at the movie that is going to have $100 million loss, at least at the table of discussion here at this point. By the way, how much Hollywood accounting here is I'm curious at. If this movie does not finish up around $450 million, which is likely to happen right now, we're looking at a pretty significant loss for the Walt Disney Company, at least $75 million, but it could be higher depending on what exactly they spent at the end of the day marketing this film.
Wow. I know, what was it? Thor Love and Thunder or whatever that one was one of the worst movies until this one came out, is what I heard.
Really?
Yeah.
So I am curious, does this mean people are tired of the superhero movie? Because that's pretty much all there is now. It seems like these AAA giant titles that, I mean, what do you think?
I'm kind of sick of them. I'm more sticking with the more story-oriented films are what I'm more interested in now, like, thrillers, horrors, dramas, etc., over these Marvel big budget things that are just okay.
I'm not even interested in Creed 3. I have no desire to see that because I've seen all the Rocky movies. That's enough for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I like a certain amount of action, and I don't mind the comic book movies, but I just don't know where's going to be the return. Now, here's my problem. I'm a sci-fi fan, and I love sci-fi. And then one of the things that all the movie studios say is that sci-fi is so expensive to produce. So if it's going to be more expensive to produce or as expensive to produce as this Ant-Man Wasp movie, then we may never see anything in that.
Here's what I call
simply because it's going to cost too much to produce.
Here's what I call shenanigans. Now, this example's a tad bit out of date because the old guy was 2 when this movie came out.
Good. So a tad bit. Thank you for that, Jonathan. I appreciate
Conquest
that.
of Space has legitimately been one of the best sci-fi movies I've seen in the last 2 years, mainly because it did have cheesy sets, yada yada. It was 50s, but this movie's actually about what happens to mankind and humans and the interaction of a group of people as they go from Earth to Mars. And it had very simple sets, nothing complex. I think what's happening is Hollywood set the bar so high in the type of movies, like it's got to be action, boom, 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 that they want to make those type of movies. Now, the question is, can they educate people to go movies that are slower, like The Martian? That was a slow movie compared to today's movies. And I doubt it cost $650 million to make. I just think, I think they just need to adjust what the perceptions of sci-fi and some of these movies are. 12 Angry Men. The 50s one had 3 sets, but it was all acting, all amazing actors. I just think they need to change what they do, to be honest.
Well, let me bring out another example then. Let's not talk about
ancient
movies per se. Let's talk about streaming television. So I'm going to bring out Star Trek Discovery.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you guys have watched it or not, but
I have.
I got to tell you, for me, my opinion, I'm right to my opinion. I really liked the show. I thought it was well done. I thought the sets were spectacular. I thought the special effects were amazing. Yes, it's small screen stuff, but still, I thought it was done very well. And this next season, the 5th season, is going to be its last because Disney came out and said it's too expensive to produce.
Wait, it's a Disney product?
I thought it was on Paramount.
I thought it was a Paramount property.
I didn't mean Disney. I'm sorry. Paramount Studios.
By the way, Disney's doing the same thing. They're having some issues too.
Yeah.
So
that's because that was another article I was reading. But no, you're right, Paramount. But that's the point. Now they're saying as you go past the 5th year, everybody wants more money. Things are more expensive, and I understand that. However, it got incredible ratings. I don't know what its Nelson numbers were, but I thought that they're probably pretty good. However, they do it for streaming. But it's disappointing. Here you have a successful show. People love it, yet they're going, sorry, we're done. And it's
Well, maybe they have the issue with like Disney with Marvel, that what they consider successful is ridiculous. Like, oh, in order for this movie to, they spent $200 million. In order to be a successful, it must make, 4 or 5, 800 million. Maybe their goal was ridiculous. Look at Netflix.
Well, let's bring up exactly. The king of cancel shows is Netflix.
Right.
And I mean, they don't even put out reasons for most of them. They're just like, oh, it's not coming back, and I just never hear that it was renewed. And then I read an article recently from Netflix that said, all the shows that we've canceled only go for small audiences. So we're not losing shows that big audiences like. And it's mostly like these studios throw out a bunch of, shows and see which net they can catch.
Right.
And so, if you look at Paramount looks like they bought Star Trek.
Right, they did. Sorry. Yeah.
So they have all the Star Trek shows. And so I think they put out, 4 or 5 Star Trek shows?
Yeah. I mean, they had Strange New Worlds, Discovery. I feel like I'm missing one. So I think there's 4. Yeah.
They put out recently. I feel like I'm missing at least one. And I watched a few of them, and I actually liked them. I think I said Picard.
Oh, did you? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Anyways, but I like. Oh, there's the cartoon. They had a cartoon.
And then they have
Below Decks.
I think they're Below Decks, and then I think they actually have another one. So anyway, go ahead.
So, but I feel like Picard and Strange New World were the ones that I really liked. I kind of got into Discovery for a little bit, but and then even Picard kind of lost some luster to me because it was kind of the same thing on repeat with that show.
Yeah, season 2. So season 3 is just kicked off, and you should watch it.
Okay.
Yeah, you really should. Last episode, I think it's episode 3. Well done.
Do you know what?
Okay.
Do you know what will never be getting old? You'll always enjoy no matter how many times you play it? Listen up. Today's show is brought to you by Audacity, the unforgettable party game for mischievous people. The game where dignity is overrated. Make sure you go to oddassity.com or selected stores. Make sure you use MadTrio, all caps, all one word, for 10% off your final order. Make sure you tell Miss Audacity herself that the MadTrio sent you. Do you want to keep up to date with the maddest of the mad at the MadTrio podcast? Make sure you go to themadtrio.com or check out our social media feeds on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
It's our own drop, James.
John, you're right-handed, right?
Yes.
Okay, I might take off your
Wait
finger.
a minute. Where's this going?
I'm going to remove that finger.
He's upset because I put a second drop, like I always do in the commercial spot.
So if he wants to do the drops, he has to use his schnoz. So speaking of sci-fi, let's see if I can get this whole thing out. Have you guys heard of magneto-active solid liquid phase transitional machine? Have you heard of that?
Wow.
I know, that's a mouthful.
Well done, James. Well done.
What the authors call it.
Wow. Okay. No. Tell me about it.
So what this thing is, it's a material that can shift between solid and liquid under the influence of a magnetic field.
Okay. All right.
Now, have you guys heard of a T-1000?
Yes.
I'm sure Rob has. Once I say Terminator 2.
Oh yeah, no, I knew exactly what we were talking
It's
about.
not a Duma.
So that's what it is, huh? It's
that's
liquid to
essentially what it
solid.
is.
Yeah.
They turn this thing into a robot that can shift its body from liquid to solid form.
Oh my God.
And they did an experiment with it to see if it can successfully escape from a little jail they made it. It's about the size of a Lego man.
Okay.
Is where they're at right now. And they were toying with it to see if it can actually escape from a little jail that they built for it. And they managed to do it.
Hey, haven't any of these people watched?
A computer? It's computer in it, or it's run.
Well,
so somehow they make a computer.
What it looks like right now is that they're controlling it from the outside with a magnetic field to pull it through and get it to do certain things. But how long until they are able to implant a magnetic field generator into it and then control it that way and essentially at some point put an AI in it.
Haven't any of these people watched bad sci-fi movies from the 80s where all the dystopian future and the robots happen? Nothing good comes from this shit.
You know what? I'm having the same problem with all the AI stuff that everybody's talking about, and everything's going on now. And I'm sitting here going, now I'm just as bad as many people. I'm playing with it a little bit myself too, because I kind of want to get a feel for what its range can do right now. And to me, it's a little archaic still, but which is to also a good thing,
Right.
because I don't want it to get too good.
Well, it is going to get too good at some
I
point. That's the
know, I know.
problem. Is
I'll be
like,
dead. I won't have to worry about it.
But if we look at it, where does science generally come from? From the fantasy of a mind, right?
Mhm.
So you look at in the early days, let's say 1900s, it was books.
So back in the old
And then
man's
we had
days.
all these hundreds of thousands of movies that, I would say a good what? Let's be very moderate here. Of these hundreds of thousands of movies, probably more millions if you go for B flicks as well. 20% is sci-fi. And that's lowballing.
Yeah.
So we look at all these movies, and then these scientists are sitting there, some of them probably snorting mercury, getting mercury poisoning, and saying, hey,
Good idea.
that's a great idea. How do we make this shit work?
Let me see if I can figure this out. Well,
Yeah. And then some billionaire sits back and says, I can make money off that.
Yeah.
Let's
Real
fund
life Tony Stark. We've already
it.
talked
So,
about that.
We have, Elon Musk,
Yeah.
as Ryan says, the
That's right.
evil genius that we have.
I think we need to get some of these people to read Isaac Asimov.
Yeah.
Look it up, folks, if you don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm kind of. It feels like that's what I'm seeing, because we talked on the show probably a couple months ago about the implant, implant
Yeah. Exactly.
that I'm like, that's going to get hacked,
Yeah.
So
boy.
there's sci-fi stories about that. There's Johnny Mnemonic, where people were getting hacked. I mean, you got sci-fi for everything, and then we see all these things coming out. I mean, I'm surprised no one's really finished the Frankenstein, but somebody probably has. There have been people that have tried. I mean, there was a scientist that took a dog's head and made it stay alive for a certain amount of time after it was dead by controlling it with electrics.
It's funny you mentioned this. It reminds me back when the internet really started becoming popular, to all the civs. And you heard all these people say, this really utopian, the internet's going to unite all people with access to unlimited data. It's going to unite the world. And instead, what you got was Twitter, which is an absolutely abysmal place.
I think initially it was thought it's going to be a great big library and you're going to be able to find whatever you want, not realizing that there was going to be TikTok.
So,
Well,
honestly, TikTok's not even really the problem. I was going to say TikTok's
I don't know about that.
Well, no,
I'm going to disagree with you.
Here's the thing: is that you're missing the one thing. You're missing the human factor. Instead of it being like the future scenes in Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure, it's like everybody's all of a sudden high schoolers. The amount of shit people say. Ryan said once the quote by Mike Tyson: "Everybody has a plan to get punched in the face." Everybody talks so much shit online. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So you're talking about how the internet is going to bring people together, and you're going to find like-minded people, right, John?
Yeah.
Well, talking about that, you say that TikTok isn't that great or anything, but I've got a problem with these people out there who come up with idiotic theories. And one of the more interesting ones I've read recently, let's see if John's heard of this one. Now, I almost wouldn't be surprised if you have heard of this one. Have you heard of the torus Earth theory?
Torus Earth theory. Not off the top of my head.
So there's a lot of people out there who hate flat earthers. I found someone worse. And I say someone, but there's people that say that there are more than just one.
Wait.
So,
There's people worse. I just want you to rephrase that. There's people worse than flat earthers.
let me explain what torus-shaped Earth is. Okay? It's the tastiest celestial body, our sugar-glazed planet Earth. They believe our Earth is donut-shaped. Correct.
It's not
the actual
technically.
terminology is torus-shaped.
It's not technically a sphere, but it's not a torus. What?
They believe that our Earth is shaped like a donut, where light bends and follows the curvature of the torus, making the hole unseeable. And instead of the moon going around our spherical shaped Earth, it goes through the middle of our donut shape.
What in the name of Einstein's relativistic world are these people smoking? Holy shit. By the way, I want some. If you can come up with that wacky theory by looking at pictures of some of the most high-end cameras in the world in outer space, and that's the shit you come up with? Oh, wow.
So, yeah, this is what our internet is being used for these days. Are idiots to find each other, and I don't know.
I need the guy. I need to find a clip from the with Aunt B and all that. You know, the guy goes, the Jim Neighbors going, surprise, surprise, surprise. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of.
So
Flat earthers, at least I get until they talk about, you know, until you hear them talk about the curvature of the earth in the conversation.
Yeah. So this whole thing actually started out on the Flat Earth Society page. Somebody got on there and made a joke that people took seriously and created a whole theory about it that people gravitated to. I don't know how many people. I'm hoping it's like 5. But I have a sinking feeling that it's going to be more than that.
So here's the ad copy from the Flat Earthers. So I just got to read this. This is straight from their website. This is the Flat Earth Society podcast, a place of free thinkers to discuss alternative science and new or unusual ways of viewing the world.
Well,
there's a
so it's the onion.
There's a lot of things that science
Right.
isn't quite up to spec, but I thought that everybody could agree on one thing. We're on a quasi marble. I'm sorry. The Flat Earthers guys are hilarious. Next one is a rhombus. I can't wait for the rhombus Earthers. There's got to be, you know, we got to come up with the next one.
I bet if we sat around long enough, we could come up with the next one, and I'm sure we could get somebody to believe it. But
this is almost as dumb as the news article I saw yesterday that says Gene Hackman is unrecognizable. He's 80 fucking 3. What are you exactly expecting him to look like? Jim Neighbors? I mean, come on.
I mean, are they like going back to when he was Lex Luthor and Superman? Maybe farther back. I've seen some of his older movies, but I can't think of them off the top of my head right now. But I mean, what was that Superman? The mid '80s?
Yeah.
Where he played Lex Luthor, and I mean, he was doing movies way before then too, but I can't think of them off the top of my head.
no, he goes back to early westerns, and he was doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. I just can't think of the westerns names, but yeah, I mean, goodness, he's unrecognizable. Oh God! Speaking of which, now I could see you maybe watching this more than John, although John might be looking for this more than you. History of the World Part 2.
So I started to watch it.
You haven't watched it yet?
Wait, hold on.
I have not watched the whole thing yet.
I was hesitant. I heard about this, and I was hesitant to do it mainly because I love Mel Brooks so much that I was really worried that if I watched it, it would taint my view of him.
Okay, so you haven't watched it, John. You're almost on the verge of boycotting.
Yeah, just because I love Mel Brooks.
All right, so I talked with so Ryan and I have been on this, since we actually heard that it was actually happening. Every so often you can see Mel Brooks' influence in the show. And like History of the World Part 1, there's different skits that they do.
Yeah.
I only liked 3 of them out of 8 episodes.
Wow.
That's what I'll say. Okay, wait. 4. There was a short one in there that I almost went over. So 4 skits out of 8 episodes that I enjoyed.
Hey, 50% enjoyment? That's probably not bad these days.
No. When I say skits, I'm talking about like.
No, I know.
Yeah, it's not that bad. So, yeah, I mean.
I'm halfway through, James. I'm halfway through, and I'm not sure I'm going to finish the second half.
I would say that there's a couple skits in there that are kind of worth watching. That aren't in the first half.
Okay.
So I would stick it through and then follow your opinion. I will
go from there. Huh?
I will watch the second season.
All right.
But there was quite a lot that I just was like, you could have done without this. And that's if there is a second season. It might go through anyways, just because it's to me, it's written for a different audience than what Mel Brooks wrote for when he wrote the movie, 40 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a different audience that they're projecting to than what Mel Brooks movies were projecting to.
Right.
So
I love Mel Brooks so much. I am actually holding up, you guys can't see it, a Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks record.
Yeah.
I love the guy. So that's one of the reasons why when I heard this, I'm like, I can't see it. Modern comedy, for better or worse, has so many danger zones in it that I just can't see enjoying that.
Yeah. Yeah. There was some pretty good ones, I would say, but it was almost so far in between to me that it was like I almost was robbed and did not finish it. But as John says, I usually stick it out with these things.
He's a masochist. That's the pure.
I only have so many minutes left in my life. I'm getting picky about what I've spent time on.
I've watched James. I've seen James talk about watching movies that would gag a billy goat, and he's like, "It was okay, like watching all seven Phantasms within like a 3-day period." Like,
yeah, but yeah, for one of those, I kept on saying for years that Mel Brooks owes us Hitler on Ice and Jews in Space. And so far we got Hitler on Ice, and I will say this, I am holding out hope for Jews in Space. That's all I can say.
You know what?
Springtime for Hitler in Germany is probably one of the most funniest things I've ever seen.
Well, and you reminded me, it is almost time for me to switch my ringtone to that, Rob.
Yeah,
it is almost springtime.
Almost.
That's when I switched to that ringtone. So John knows I did this, but there was back when ringtones were really popular and you could find a ringtone of everything, right?
Oh no.
I sat down and I searched and searched and searched for a ringtone of that song. And it did not exist.
And instead he got Every Sperm is Sacred.
You know what I did?
You made your own.
I did make my own, and I still have it.
There you go.
And you should have seen my mom's face when she heard it the first time.
Yeah, I can imagine if you don't kind of know where it's coming from and what it's all about. I could kind of go, what?
I do have kind of a question, and this goes out to our audience about comedy in general. Do you think comedy is better now or worse? And being a guy who's, I'm midlife. God, that hurts to say. My definition of comedy is a little bit more brutal and blunt than what's considered comedy now. So I would say comedy's a zero-sum game. Like, I like stand-up comedy, but movie comedies, I haven't seen one that's funny in 20 years. So I'd love to know your opinion.
I'll say this about comedy is one of those things that is living. And what I mean by that is that as our morality,
that's true,
as our opinions, as our political leanings, and I'll even throw it in there, as a society gets less or more butthurt, comedy changes that. Now, when we look at things, some of the best comedy makes you butthurt, to use that term. But as our society is as a whole, it's become way too sensitive to what Rob's generation was, or our generation. So they find things that, because when you make a joke that is offensive, it has to be just the right amount of offensive.
So
it can't
it's
be too offensive. It has to be just right. And so our generation, when we look at what's comedy now, it's like, that's barely offensive.
Well, comedy is comedy is a razor's edge. Somebody recently, an old comic, I don't remember who, basically said comedy's designed to push people's edges. And I was thinking about what you just said. I would say comedy and when my dad was born and further, the greatest thing about now is those things that were found funny aren't. Like racist humor is generally not funny. I would say you can make it funny, but it's very far and few between. And that's not a bad thing anymore, by the way, either. I don't think. I do think some of the more gendered humor, poking at stereotypes of women and men, aren't as funny anymore. And I don't think that's a bad thing either. I just wish people were... I just wish people, as James said, just not as butthurt. We're able to take it as comedy and not as up in arms about it.
Well, that's the problem, and that's why one of the things we look at when I'm watching History of the World Part 2, it's like there's so much that's leaning towards this new generation. And that's nothing to say anything against the new generation. I just think that there's stuff in there that I don't really find as funny as maybe they do.
Hey, so this is a story. This is a question for the old guy, is growing up as somebody who grew up in probably one of the biggest changes between generations. The greatest generation and the baby boomers, especially in the 60s, were probably the biggest culture clashes. What do you think?
Yeah, no, you're right about that. So I was thinking, while you guys were talking a little bit, I was thinking about some of the older comedians out there. I mean, you go back to
Don Rickles.
Lenny Bruce. You go back,
Donnie Bruce.
Lenny Bruce, for me, was kind of the start of the really bad, vulgarity and some of the things that were not acceptable at the time. And Lenny Bruce was, getting in trouble for things that he was saying back then. And you kind of look at it, and you look at it with today's eyes, you go, First Amendment rights versus back then, where, you could go to jail for saying the wrong thing or reading the wrong thing or thinking the wrong thing. And then I was thinking about George Carlin and some of the things he got in trouble with for the same thing, for the seven
words you can't say. He's the reason.
Anyway,
he's the reason why radio censorship exists. That 7-second delay. They played his act on radio. No, it's legitimately true. They played his act on the radio. Got big trouble.
So, and you kind of go, it's amazing how far we've come. to a certain degree about what you can say and what you can, but at the same time, now that we've made all those gains, now we're also going back. We're saying you can't say that. It ain't woke, man. You can't be,
But let me
right?
let me ask you a question. That white guy doing the Chinese thing, or like back in the day, what do you think that's better now? That it's like you can't touch it. You have to be a little bit more original.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with sensitivity. Be sensitive about certain things, but it doesn't mean that you completely cut out making fun of maybe a stereotype or something, because it can still be fun.
Depending on how it's done.
A Mexican make fun of a Mexican. A black guy can make fun of a black guy. A Jew can make fun of a Jew. So there's still ways of doing it under the right circumstances. But So what was the question?
Basically, because your father's generation and your generation, probably at least in the 20th century, the greatest cultural difference between the greatest generation and hippies.
Huge, yes, absolutely, huge difference, no doubt about it. But don't forget, the greatest generation had guys like besides Mel Brooks, I was thinking of Don Rickles, right? And you start look at some of the Dean Martin and Ronan Martin, and you start looking at all these. They did some stuff that was pretty out there for even back then. And then one of the things I know I was reflecting on about, because it's funny that you bring up this joke thing, because I was actually thinking about it. We used to make fun when I was a kid, for some reason, Polish jokes.
Yep. You can't make Polak jokes anymore.
Right. But, Polak jokes were the thing. Gypsy jokes were still kind of the thing. There was all these things, and I look back at it now and I go, wow. I mean, my God, Polak jokes were that was what we lived on as little, as young kids. So I'm going, oh man.
An additional question to people out there: do you think it's a bad thing that we can't joke about each other's ethnicities? The greatest example for me, this is Speedy Gonzalez. I've literally never met anybody of Hispanic descent who hates the character. Every Mexican I've ever met, and that's quite a bit, actually loves the character. Can point out Slowpoke Rodriguez, which is Speedy's cousin, say, oh, I got a cousin just like that. Do you think it's a bad thing that we can't make fun of each other's differences and laugh at the similarities? Because that's something I think is missing.
Have either of you guys heard of Stan Freberg?
No.
So Stan Freberg.
I've heard of him. I don't know much about him.
So he was a comic back in the 50s into the 60s, and he would make these comedy records. And I sometimes thought that Mel Brooks got his whole idea about comedy from it, because it was called it wasn't History of it was Comedy in the United States of America, and it was a bunch of skits of jokes and things like, they made a lot of fun of the Kennedys back then. This was before JFK was assassinated. They made Native American Indian jokes back then. They made jokes of everything. They were making fun of everybody. And it was pretty interesting, because I had that album one time and I have no clue whatever happened to it.
Wow, and Native American jokes. Ooh.
I think that's the problem now, Rob, is that, we always say that term of, they make fun of everything. It's like when you watch Blazing Saddles,
right?
They literally make fun of everything, person in the world.
Yep.
And that was okay.
Yep.
Now we can't make fun of everything.
Well, the Dean Martin roasts are the ones I like to point at, because all of them, I've never heard anybody really getting uncomfortable. Now I guarantee there was, but you never hear anybody really complaining. They're all laughing on the daises. And I part of this, and just kind of wrapping up back to the beginning of the conversation we had about politics in the United States, I wonder if this is part of the issue, is we no longer have like a collective sense of humor. We can't laugh at each other. My aunt, towards the end of her life, we could joke. She would call me a neocon. I'd call her a communist. And we were politically opposed on everything, on every level you can imagine. But we could laugh at each other for that. I think that's what's missing. I think the world just has less humor in it, that we can poke fun at each other.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think it's more that, you know, there's become way too much taboo. Where, and maybe it's a swing. Maybe it's like, you know, that whole thing of, you know, people talking about the pendulum swinging.
Yes.
Where we swung one way for so long, and now we're swinging back another way, and maybe by the time
it'll swing again,
it'll be back.
Yeah.
But right now, it feels like we're on the other swing, where things are becoming off limits.
And I am curious about something I was thinking about. If somebody, name a group that's super sensitive, how would you address that too? If there was a group, and I pick a group who said, okay, I don't like that humor, how would
North
you?
Koreans.
North Koreans, okay. It's like North Koreans don't like Kim Jong-un jokes. How would you deal with that and be honest and still keep humor? And because I don't get that line, because comedy to me is touches everything.
In North Korea, how you deal with that is you get in front of a firing squad and get shot. How do we do it without that? That's the good question. How do we broach that? And I think it goes back to what I was kind of saying is like, it's that line that you have to find where it's just right. You can't go over that line. You kind of said it's like a razor's edge or something like that. It's a thin line. You can't go over the edge. You have to be on the edge without going over, and that's where comedy is. It's like Michael Richards. I know you two know who he is. If you guys don't know who he is, he played Kramer.
Oh yes.
On Seinfeld, and he got blacklisted for going over that edge. And he didn't just go over the edge; he just jumped right off head first.
He committed career suicide.
Yeah, he was doing great, and then he just kind of went over, and it was, if I remember correctly, it was a heckler that helped push him over the edge. And that's the problem, is you have to be a comedian, and the dirty comedians, most of the successful ones, are really good about staying on that edge and not showing that they've got a foot over it. Because most of these dirty comedians have a foot over it or sitting on it, thinking about jumping off. But they can show you that edge without showing that they're hanging off of it most of the time. So they know how to pull it back when it needs to be pulled back, right, and how to push it when to push it.
No,
that was George Carlin to me. That was, you know, all those guys.
Don Rickles.
All those guys were on that edge.
Well, look at Richard Pryor.
Yeah, Richard Pryor for sure. Oh my God, yes.
Okay, so I mean, he was, wow. I mean, you name it, he did it, and he was hysterical.
No, I
mean, see no evil, hear no evil. You can't do that anymore.
I did want to point out the Michael Richardson, the Kramer thing. He basically went off the deep end and said the N-word, which I'm against completely. It's not funny at all, and I think that's also the thing. What James was saying is you can't do that. There's no redemption for you.
There's a line that you just don't cross because you're going to fall off the edge.
You know, it's interesting. I've been watching. I like comedy, and I like some of the young comics that are coming up, and I follow some on Facebook, female comics. I've been finding interesting lately because I watch them, and the humor that they do, that they're able to do, a man can't do and get away with. And it's just interesting to watch this, and it's some of it's absolutely hysterical, and you know, you just watch them, and some of the stuff they come up with, and some of the cuts they make on their own gender, it's just amazing, and it's good to see that humor's still out there, and it's good to see that young comics are still trying, because how many comics I've heard a number of comics that have come out and said trying to do comedy in today's day and age is almost suicide. And I can see that. I can see how that's really difficult. And but yet everybody loves a comic. If and you got to laugh. You have to have the ability to laugh.
So
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm gonna end. I got two things that I want.
I do have a question.
I was reading
for the old guy, though.
headlines, John, real quick. Two things that are comical to me. Two headlines that I read. Okay, one now is anti-masturbation groups are a thing, and joining them may be bad for your mental health.
Yeah,
That's
no,
headline one.
no
And
fact.
headline two is Gwyneth Paltrow says rectal ozone therapy has been very helpful.
Apparently, and also apparently with vaginal steaming.
So that's my end. Those my jokes for tonight, folks. Thank you very much. Leave a tip, and I'm out of here.
I did want to end with one more thing, since Rob is technically the oldest person in the podcast ever.
Couldn't just let me end on my jokes.
No, I couldn't.
I was going to.
Oh, okay, fine. We're going to end at the jokes.
No.
I do have a question on the end. Hopefully I'll remember. Hold on. I got pops for this, so I'm about to do it. Oop, wrong one. So, as always, thank you for listening.
I think maybe the sad trombone was probably more correct.